what makes a Barndo build a barndominium?
Yeah, so this is a weird question. I've tried to answer it a few times. Barndos have become a style, more than anything. Whereas originally it's a means of construction, but it's just kind of taken on a style, and we've even seen it like with some of the the growth and things that we've had. And I don't think I'm not arrogant enough to think that we've inspired this solely by the Barndo Code, but we do see a trend where other builders who build conventional homes are now trying to tap into the market space and offer barndos. And they're regular homes, and they put some different finishes on them and sell them as barndos. And so I could see that from the outside looking in as a style of home, right?
Yep.
It has this like metal siding, a metal roof, or maybe it has this kind of low country farmhouse look to it. And so, you would be crazy to be in the construction industry and not want to tap into the absolute robust desire of people to have them. And so I can level with this person to where like, how can these be called barndos when they look shaped nothing like a barn or whatever? But we even get that, and we do build true post frame style. So I think it's a complex question. So what is a barndo? Whatever you want it to be. We're at that point now. I've got friends that build stick built houses, and they put metal siding on them, and they call them barndominiums, and people buy them, and people love them, and it is what it is. Like, who am I to tell you that's not one?
Yep.
What is one? I don't know. If you want one in the truest form, I guess go buy an old barn and finish the hayloft and live in it. But the way that we do it is a post frame construction. It is a style of build that has lended itself to building barns over time. It was a more affordable way for people to build big covered shelters to get animals or equipment out of the weather, or even grains or feed or anything that needed to be dry. It was a way for them to do it with less materials, and get these there. Now, what we've done is we've come in and heavily modified that, because we don't build agricultural buildings. We don't build, industrial buildings. We build residential construction only.
Yep.
So we took the tried and true methods of post-frame construction, and we blended it with some things that are done in the residential construction world because it's more conducive to residential living. And so we've kind of blended those two things together. But the load of our homes are completely post-frame loaded, and they're built in the way that a post-frame home is done. Now, the way we infill lumber, that's changed over the years. We used to be more conventional with purlins, and then we went to bookshelf purlins, and then now we do vertical infill with 2x6s. And the reason behind that is it's just more conducive to residential dwellings, like to just do it that way. It speaks the language of the trades. It solves a lot of problems for people in the field, like when they're putting their electrical in there. There's the typical ways they can mount boxes. When homeowners move in and they want to hang pictures, they're not stuck hanging it with a drywall anchor, or trying to hit one of these 2-foot spacings or whatever that may be inside that house, to where they can't get the height they want when they mount their TV or whatever. And then we don't have to come behind it and put blocking. We don't have to put special blocking for cabinetry and stuff like that. We can integrate that with vertical infill framing, because most of the industry is designing products, features, and installation methods for vertical framing. So we're building a post-frame structure, and then we're vertically infilling it. And, we have barndos that we've built that are post-frame construction that have hardy board siding and shingle roofs on them. And so from the outside looking in, it looks more like a conventional home. And only until you pull down and look into the structure can you understand that that's actually a barndominium. And so I think it's just the wider that the construction method becomes available to people, you're going to have people that have a different taste, but they like the superior structure quality of a barndominium build. And then you have people that live in parts of the country where red iron or steel frame buildings are what they've always considered to be a barndominium, and they can't even wrap their mind around the fact that we would build a wood structure and call it a barndominium. I see that comment all the time. And then you have areas of the country like the Midwest where pole barns have been a thing, and then they see the way that we construct a pole barn, and they're like, well, that's not a pole barn at all. And so you're never going to have a solid opinion. You're just going to have to embrace the fact that everyone has an opinion. And, so what is a barndominium? It's whatever you want it to be. I have absolutely nothing in me that's going to go out here and bash someone who built their dream home, and they use a different means of construction than what I prefer. So it is what it is. But I think more so than anything, it's a style of home. A lot of it for us is how it's constructed, not necessarily how it looks. Granted, most of ours do look like what a conventional or a traditional barndominium looks like,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not always the case, and there's certain circumstances where we're using wooden trusses. There's
Yeah.
certain circumstances where other means of construction are more acclimated for that. We have an entire line of product, SFH, that's just a
Mm-hmm.
stick frame house,
Yeah.
to where we come in and we utilize some of those traditional methods, and those are not barndominiums, but they're built off of our plans. But so again, I think it's just a question where some people just get hung up on an idea, and the thing is, look, if that's not a barn door to you, don't build that one.
Mm-hmm.
But I think getting in a position where you're trying to like judge what someone's building and saying, well, that's not a real barndominium. I mean, what is one? What
Yeah.
truly? What is one?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the actual definition of one would not resemble much of anything that people are building.
Yeah, you'll get a different perspective every definition that you ask.
Yeah,
So.
but it's a common question, and people ask it all the time. If someone were to come in and say, "Hey, what is the biggest difference in what Barndo Co is building versus what every other person on the block is building?"
Mm-hmm.
I would lean into the method of construction. I would lean into the structural superiority of what we're building.
Mm-hmm.
We do this apples and oranges comparison all the time
Yeah.
of like, hey, us versus them, and who's them? It could be anybody. It could, like, in that reference, we make reference to conventional construction. We make reference to different types of pole barns and different types of pole barn construction. We make reference to different types of steel structures. It's really, I can only speak to what we do. And what we do is a post frame hybrid, which gives you the superior strength, stability, and low maintenance of a traditional pole frame barn dominium, as well as the convenience of a construction that's conducive to what everyone expects when they're building a residential home. We just eliminate some of those additional steps required because, we're trying to speak the massive language of trades and products in a multitude of states, in a multitude of counties, with a multitude of subcontractors. So we have to kind of meet in the middle there. So that's the best way I would know to answer that question.
Yeah. So I mean, you've already hit some of these the answer for this next question, but someone asked, "Are your barndos typical metal shells or built like stick built homes?" Because I know people see our posts on social media where they see the wood framing and then the metal trusses. So you touched on our post frame hybrid a little bit, but go into that a little bit more in terms of like customization and ceiling heights and whatnot.
Yeah. So and that question's a great question because in the industry, you see more shell builds than you see anything because typically there's people that build really good barns and then there's people who can build houses, and there's not a lot of people that build really good barn houses. And so we're a turnkey builder. So we're kind of looking at it from both sides, both perspectives. If you go out and hire a company that builds shells all the time, they don't care what you're doing with that building, right? Like, that's cool that it has windows and doors on it, but they don't care. They're going to go in and erect the building, and you have an empty shell, and they don't care. They don't care. You could put hay in it. It could be a paintball course. You could put a pickleball court in there. You could turn it into a home. You could park your truck in it. They don't care. They're there to build the shell and move on. Whereas we're looking at it going, is this a residential structure? Because if it is, then we're a good fit for you. And if we were to build a shell, you're going to get a substantially more built out for you with a shell with us versus other builders, because we're not just coming in and building a pole frame building. And if you don't know what that means, if you could visualize for a second, if you just had a 40 by 60 build, right? 2,400 square foot. If you hire a pole frame builder, they're going to come in, they're going to set posts in the ground. They're going to put purlins on the outsides of those posts. They're typically going to put those purlins on like a 2-foot spacing, and then they're going to screw metal into those purlins. And so to visualize that, a post is vertical, a purlin is horizontal, right? And that's what gives the building some structure and rigidity. And then once the metal sheeting goes on or the siding goes on, it ties that building in together. Now, from the inside of that building, you could use it for whatever you would like. If you were going to live in it, then you would have to come out the interior side and build in either some infill framing or put some additional purlins on the interior side of that structure to build a wall cavity. So that there's more that goes into it. The way we build is we're going to go in and we're not going to put poles in the ground. We're going to build a structural foundation because we know that that's what typically lends itself to a more conducive environment for a residential build. We're then going to mount and anchor our posts above grade, and we're going to go in and do the same thing. We're going to build the pole frame structure. We're going to put a pole up vertically. We're going to attach it to a metal truss that goes across to a another post on the other side that's perpendicular to it and is or parallel to it, and we're going to attach that to the concrete on the other side. In between those posts, we're going to vertically frame with 2x6 is 16 inches on center, which starts looking like a stick-built home. So I get it. If you see a picture, it's going to make you scratch your brain a little bit because it doesn't look like what you were expecting. You're like, well, that's just a stick-built house. It's not. It's not.
Yeah.
It's a post-frame barn. But we are stick framing in between it. And to be honest with you, from a load perspective, it's absolutely not necessary. It's not necessary. It's not even required. But when you get that shell with us, we're also going to go in and we're going to put a sheathing all the way around that house to where we could attach metal to it. You could put vinyl siding on it. You could put brick on it. You could put stone on it. You could put hardy board on it. You could do whatever you want to the outside of that building, because we take that additional step and sheathe that house. Then you go to the roof. Up on that steel truss, there's little cups, and then you have purlins that are running across that. So you got girts on the wall, you got purlins on the roof, and typically those purlins are 2 foot on center. And a traditional pole barn builder would go in and screw the metal straight to those purlins. And so when you walk in that building, typically you would either have some kind of metal building insulation, like a vinyl blanket with a little bit of fiberglass on the back of it that was draped over that structure before the metal went on, or some people don't even do that, right? They just put metal straight to girts on the sidewalls and straight to purlins on the top, and you would see the metal and everything inside that shell. With us, we're also going to go in and deck that entire roof with sheathing, and then you could put architectural shingles on it, you could put metal, you could put standing seam, you could put whatever you want on your roof. And so I guess the difference would be when you walk into a Barndo Co. shell, it's built out for residential living. It's built out for you to be able to take it from there, run all your utilities, your MEPs. You know, it's already ready for drywall. It's already ready for all the finishing touches. And it's built like a residential dwelling so that you could go and hire any number of subs that don't have to have experience with barndominiums because we've bridged the gap. So you've got the superior strength and structure of barndominium or post frame, but you also have the conventional methods for any trade to be able to come in and attach into that the way that they would know how. So I again, that's the biggest difference. And in shells, we don't build a lot of them but to be honest with you, and I talked about this with Mike Moon, the pole barn guru, there's not a lot of advantage to the shell. That's the easy part. Building the structure is the easy part. All the finishing work is the hard part. So it's like, do we do them? Yeah. Is there some people that are just like, they want to get their, roll their sleeves up and get dirty and work on their homes? Cool. We'll come in and build you a shell, but when we build it, it's going to be substantially complete. And often is the case when we build a shell, all the interior framing is done as well for every room and every layout. And, we're tying in floor systems. If you have a second story, like it's essentially constructed. It's just there for you to finish.